Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Coffee with Convery. Today, we're thrilled to have Alexander de Ritter, a true visionary in the world of artificial intelligence and digital marketing. Born and raised in the picturesque city of Bruges, Belgium, Alexander's journey from a 13-year-old programming enthusiast to a successful entrepreneur and AI innovator is nothing short of inspiring. As the founder of SmythOS and INK, Alexander is at the forefront of revolutionizing enterprise efficiency through those collaborative AI systems. But there's more to this tech wizard than meets the eye. He's also a devoted father of two, a husband of over 16 years, and a proud American citizen since 2011. With his unique blend of technical expertise, entrepreneurial spirit, and passion for innovation, Alexander embodies the perfect mix of visionary and pragmatic. Together, today we will explore his fascinating career path, insights on AI in his role that's shaping our future, and the valuable lessons he's learned along the way. Alexander, welcome to the show.
Nice to be here. Thank you so much.
We're really excited to have you. And to get started, just so that people can kind of get a little bit about you, what do you think is your superpower?
I think I have more than one, but
Yeah,
I think creativity and empathy.
that's
Yeah.
awesome. That is great. I love that. I love those. If you had to think about your favorite smell, what would it be?
Oh, I think of so in Belgium, my grandmother and grandfather lived close to the French border in a province called West Flanders. Um, for American history buffs, that's close to Flanders Fields, which I visited frequently as a youngster. And they have a unique dialect that blends French and West Flemish. Um, and they had this provincial town, and much like Bell, I would spend a lot of time in libraries back then. My grandparents had this. I mean, you could think of it like a farming town, but more like a European town with a central market and, the administrative buildings, city hall, the church, the central
Okay.
square where the market would happen, kind of the heart of the town. And then they would be by bicycle, maybe 10 minutes out from that. And it was pretty rural. So they had these little outhouses. So they had the main building and then a little outhouse for laundry and one for storing vegetables and one for their propane tank to get them through the winter. And then there was one that was where my grandmother would cook on a gas contraption. I don't know what to call it.
Yeah.
It was like circular. It was set on the ground, a concrete floor, and it
Wow.
would be a propane tank tied to it. And she would have this big pot on it, and she make these slow cooking stews of like rabbit or chicken, and it would take 8 hours or something like that. She would wake up super early in the morning, and that pot would just sit there slowly boiling, and then you would come in there and you would smell that, right?
Wow.
And it's like you were looking forward to that meal with anticipation like the whole day long. I,
Oh
I
my
think
God.
that is probably one of my favorite smells.
What a fantastic story. That is like I could just see the smells coming out from that outhouse even when you open the door. Right?
Yeah,
That is really cool. Thank you for sharing that. It's neat. What is the best compliment you've ever received?
I think I I receive too many compliments. So when when you get to a certain state in your career or you do certain things like or you reach a measure of success,
Yeah.
people sometimes start giving compliments, whether you deserve them or not. And sometimes it's because they want something, sometimes it's because they mean it. Sometimes it's because they think too highly of you. Um, and I think that, I mean, any compliment that it would be among the better ones would be ones that are truly genuine and void from agenda.
Yeah,
But I almost feel like the best compliment is constructive feedback because it means that you genuinely care about me and you're not trying to suck up to me, but yet you care enough about me to let me know where I need to improve.
that's fantastic. Thank you for that's such a well thought out response, and I can tell as you were responding to it, thinking about that, and I 100% agree. Like, it's certainly something that, is nice to hear when people have something good to say. But as you're answering that question, I can see your empathy, and as you're thinking through sort of the response, because um, a lot of times when I think about compliments, it's always about the ones that mean the most is where I actually impacted somebody else in a positive way, less about myself, right? And I can
Yeah.
tell that's how you're thinking through that, and it means a lot. And you can see who the person you are by just your response there. So thank you for answering that one. Um, if you had to think about your favorite go-to snack, maybe it's the rabbit in the pot, but what is your favorite snack?
I mean, I I'll tell you a story here too. When I was when I was 12 years old, somebody told me I was drinking too much Coca-Cola, and they told me, you're addicted to Coca-Cola. Like you're and I know some people who are today, and I don't think at all comparison. It's not like I was having five Coca-Colas a day or something, but it
Right.
was like every meal, what do you want? I want Coca-Cola. And somebody told me you're addicted to Coca-Cola, and um, I um, I thought to myself, if I'm addicted to something, it means I I'm not truly in control of myself. And I said to this person, I'm not. I'm gonna not have Coca-Cola for 30 days. And 30 days went by, and I was like, but you know what? I'll show them. I'll go 3 months. And after 3 months, I said, I'm on a roll now. So to this day, I have not had one Coke since that day.
Is that right?
Um, and
Wow.
oftentimes in my life, it's I when I go through difficult times and I need willpower or I need to overcome something, I can remind myself that I I let go of Coca-Cola even though I liked it and I didn't think I was addicted to it, but it gives me strength because I'm able to say no to many things. As I grew up, that continued to shape my thinking.
Hmm.
Um, and for a long, long time, I have had no meat from 18 to 36, and then for dietary reasons, I was missing certain things
Yeah.
in my diet that were really affecting me. I said I needed to like mix that up a bit, but um, as such, I have lived a life without alcohol, without ever doing drugs, without ever smoking, without anything that can upset like the balance of my mental state. Because nature demands that anything that goes up will come down, and everything that goes down, hopefully, right, must come up. Nature likes balance.
Yeah.
So when you're dealing with caffeine or things like that, it alters your state, right? It does. And there's always a price afterwards and another pick me up to smooth out the edge, right? And I know certainly a lot of people in my life, certainly um, Coke has caffeine in it.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that having ADHD and limiting myself from any form of stimulant as such has allowed me to get to know myself better,
Hmm.
um, in both the difficult and the good times. that said, um, I I over the years, I do know that when I feel a bit down and I do want a little bit of pick me up, I will default to chocolate. I am Belgian.
I was gonna say
The
Belgium
the
chocolate.
chocolate there is to die for. I was at the airport in Brussels earlier this year, and they have this airport lounge called the Loft. If you're a United Airlines club member, I know you can get in, and I was flying United. Um, and so there was this at the entrance, there was this Belgian chocolate master chocolate maker right at the entrance, and
Wow.
he had made these chocolates, and they had a whole story to them, and he had composed it like a piece of art, and just like, oh, it was so good. On the flight back home, I stopped by his store because he had a store in the same airport. I saw him again, and I said, I'm bringing a whole box home. And after I came home, I would have visitors to my house, and I would like have my limited supply, right? And I would be like, I care about you when I'm sharing one of my chocolates
There
with
you
you.
go. I love
Yeah.
that. I love that because that must be, and chocolate's a thing. Like, and like the Brussels and the
Hmm.
Belgium chocolate,
Oh,
like, and then sometimes you see some, and I don't want to name any specific brands in the U.S., but there's some chocolate that it
is
doesn't
it
taste
really
like
chocolate?
it doesn't taste like chocolate, right?
Yeah.
And it must big
There's
disappointment for you
there's
when
a
you bite into
Simpsons
one.
there's a Simpsons episode where Homer Simpson and his family were watching TV, and there was like a COVID type of crisis outside, but it was with like caterpillars eating up everything.
Okay.
Um, and they were watching a show on TV called "Is it Cake or is it Steak or is it Fake?" Like the Belgian chocolate is definitely very, very different. And especially because you can have these brands that
Yeah.
say made in Belgium, and that's a certain quality. But then you have the artisan chocolate makers who make
Yeah.
these chocolates and compose these with different flavors and techniques. And it's a whole other dimension.
See,
So, so yeah, little chocolates once in a while. I think that would be my go-to answer.
you know what's also super interesting about that is the way you describe it and the artisan and the way he
Mhm.
creates the chocolate. Like even thinking about the audience listening to you as we're going through these thoughts, it's like that's a career, right? That's
Oh
something
yeah.
he does and is every day and gets, I imagine, great joy out of.
There's a
Right?
lesson to be learned here. So first a short path in history, because when two men are talking for more than 20 minutes, the Roman Empire has to come up. That's just like a rite of passage, okay?
Yep.
So the Roman Empire extended all the way to the province of Belgica, right? So you had Gallia and then Belgica, that was the northern frontier. So the place kind of where the conquest stopped is where today you find the Dutch-speaking population to the north of Belgium and the French-speaking population to the south of Belgium that was Romanized. And so I lived on the Dutch-speaking part, and Julius Caesar said of all of the Belgians and Gallians and so forth, like the Belgians are the toughest, right? Because he clearly met his border of his empire there in his
Yep.
conquests. And so it would be natural that he calls them like some tough people. But what very few people know is this. They think of like Rome and Italy as this sophisticated civilization with its senates and its theaters and its culture and its art and its sciences, and they can think of Gallia and all the places as the barbarians, the thing they conquered that had very little culture and very little civilization. And the reason why people think that is because they didn't have a written tradition; they had an oral tradition.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, thousands of years later, we have the written traditions from the Romans. The victors tell the story, and then the oral tradition to a large extent has been lost. But what we do know from this area that I come from, and from stories from Roman writers and some oral tradition that remains, and archaeology, is this: if a Roman senator wanted to get some gift for the birthday of his wife, what would he get? He would get crafts from Gallia. We know in history that um, we know that it is a culture of artisanry, a
Hmm.
culture of artisanry. Fast forward in Belgium, like growing up in this town of Bruges, there were several bakeries, a
Hmm.
bakery in every street, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And these bakeries are not just bakeries; they are traditions of artisans,
Hmm.
with master bakers having apprentice bakers and passing on their secrets through generations. You have that similar culture in Japan when you think of sushi masters, and um, and so there is a spirit that you can trace all the way back from the Roman Empire when they conquered Gallia. The culture of that people is one of artisanry, where you elevate something that seems ordinary and
Hmm.
hone it to such a degree in craft, that with so much passion, that it becomes transformed in something else altogether. And so that brings me to the piece of chocolate and the artisanry and the cloth I'm cut off from, like the cloth I'm cut from, like
Right.
my fabric of my being. I think that in as a young person, you wonder what you will do in your career. You wonder what not just what you'll do, but what you will do that will have meaning to yourself, that will fill your life with meaning. And when you get a bit older, that transforms in thinking about legacy as you start contemplating your mortality more.
Hmm.
And I would say that it is an exceptional gift to anyone when they find something they are so passionate about, that they transform what they do into an art. And that is what artisan means. When you can pour yourself into such a craft, work does not mean work anymore. You would work even if you were not paid. And we're looking at a time in AI where we're looking at a time of both scarcity,
Hmm.
and we wonder, will there be jobs in the future? What will I do in the future? I would I would highly recommend that anyone who elevates something to a soul craft will always have a place in society, in the world, and will always have meaning and fulfillment. And that's certainly what I did with my craft. I see the internet as my canvas and code as my paint, and
Wow.
people. Um, you orchestrate it like an orchestra, and you can make beautiful things that give you deep and profound meaning. But you cannot do a job just because it makes money. That is miserable. So if you have not found your passion yet, I would say, like, broaden your horizons, because there's something out there for you. And then when you find that, pour yourself completely in it, and don't do it for work, do it for passion. The money will come,
Hmm.
just like you can be the baker or the chocolate maker, and you can be you can be honored as a humble cobbler or a humble chocolate maker. You can be honored by the entire world for a simple craft that you just elevate to an art. And
Love
so
that.
that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, what a beautiful story and so much insights and ideas there for our listeners. Thank you for sharing that. I think such an insightful idea around the passions. I think that's true. The passions have to come first, right? And sometimes we take for granted, like, by listening to your story, you've brought to life the chocolate makers, the cobblers, different things that people sometimes just walk by and think, oh, well, that I'll just grab a chocolate and go. Well, that's not there's a story there. And thank you for sharing that. It's super meaningful. Really good reflection point for sure. Thinking about school, knowing where you are now, what was your favorite subject? Like, what was your interest when you were in school?
I'm I told you that I try to stay away from addictions, but if I had an addiction, it would be an information addiction. I can't turn off. Um, but the way, so I cannot say what is my favorite. I think they were all my favorite, maybe except for French because the grammar was terrible and all the exceptions and my grades really suffered and my mental health perhaps made me more resilient. But no, I'm grateful to that too.
Yeah,
I would say that I like to learn differently,
yeah,
and I'd like to think that the way I resisted learning and the way I wanted to learn is probably the way every child in school should be learning going forward.
hmm,
And with that, I mean this. There is a very powerful saying that a truth discovered is more powerful than a truth revealed.
yeah,
And that means that you need to give your students the opportunity to make discoveries. Then you make knowledge your own.
absolutely.
There is this idea that school should just be about revealing knowledge and then children memorizing it. I think education should be more about the joy of discovery.
Well said.
And when it is discovered, you have pride in that knowledge because you participated in humanity's journey to get to this knowledge. And your brain will not allow you to forget it because it's such a joy. It's such an endorphin rush for you to find out something. When you have a great idea and it turns out to be right, there's no better intellectual high than that. And I think top researchers will acknowledge that moment that the piece of the puzzle became clear to them when everything fit into place. That there's no more intellectual high to it. And I think you need to give children the opportunity to discover for themselves. This is why, like, when a child comes to you and asks questions and comes up with ideas, you know, watch them with amazement and
100%.
say, did you did you think of that yourself? How did you come to that? Like, don't be like, oh yeah, of course, blah 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 blah.
Right.
Like, that's the worst thing you can do. That's like it's like murder, intellectual murder.
Yeah.
You're killing a child's soul with that.
So true.
Encourage that curiosity. I've always I've always approached knowledge through asking questions. And we live in an age of information overload.
Yep.
If you don't know the right question to ask AI, for example, you will not get a good answer back. And the quality of what you get in is based on how good the questions you can put in and how you can steer it. So critical thinking is incredibly important.
Big time.
Incredibly important. Um, Challenge information. Progress does not happen from accepting everything people thought was true. It comes from people who challenged what people thought were true and so made inventions and made progress. That's the definition. Never stop asking questions, but do it with a deep, deep humility that we have so much still to learn.
Hmm.
And I'll just tell this one quick story because it's just like really nice. So my youngest one, he's 10 years old, and he came to me and he said, Dad, when you look under the microscope, you see cells, but I know they're made of atoms. And he said, but atoms have to be made of something too. And I think those things are made of something too. And if you think about it, it's infinite, right? And I said, right. Wow, that's some deep thinking. He said, wait, I'm not done. He said, but if I look at the stars, there's always something after and behind them too. And there's always something bigger too. And then he said, and I said, wow, that's a really good observation. Wait, I'm not done yet. And he said, okay, so Dad, are we infinitely large or infinitely small?
Wow. Wow.
And we need to ourselves to have a curiosity
Absolutely.
that has no bounds, that allows us to experience the wonders of creation. And if you just think about like having a strawberry that's homegrown when it's just ripe from
Yeah.
a garden, and you taste that, and you haven't had imagine you never had a strawberry in your life, and your lips taste the strawberry for the first time. Can you imagine what goes through that brain of yours, what you
Yep.
feel?
Yep.
And we take so much for granted, and we go about our careers, and we get compliments and accolades, and we make money, and after a while we start taking things for granted, or things are normal, or accept the status quo. But we should embrace adulthood with a childlike um,
Hmm.
amazement, and a childlike humility, and a childlike desire for learning. And that's certainly how I approach your question of favorite topics. To me, things are all interconnected in different ways. And I love making analogies between biology and psychology and computer science, and I do it all the time. I just put it all together in how I try to approach the world, and understanding that I'm a very tiny grain of salt in a very vast ocean of time.
Hmm.
Yeah.
100%. Can I ask you a little more? First of all, that story of your son is a beautiful one. And what I want to ask you is, and I see this often where I get asked the same, like, what is this skill that you think most people really need? And I'm glad you brought up critical thinking and those skills. But when you said curiosity, it's something that I constantly say are one of my three values or is around
Mhm.
curiosity. And but as a society, we don't always support that continuance of like you are with a child, right? There's these norms that we get shoved into, or these ways to approach and define success.
Mhm.
And I find sometimes when I actually say to people, like, stay curious, they think a little bit because they're like, wow, I think I kind of lost that along the way. What do you think about that? Do you think there's a way that I don't know how to practice it, but I feel like
I
the
think
points
there's
are really
a
well taken, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on that because I think there's sometimes where we just get into this routine, I guess is the word, and people lose it.
so Peter Pan.
Yep.
I think most people have seen Peter Pan, the classic, right?
Yep.
Um, Actually went to London and passed by the home of the writer and saw where he
Oh
wrote
wow.
Peter Pan. And there's this window where, he would have been flying out of Wendy's room,
Yep.
right? And so that was a physical building where he wrote that, and he inspired his story. He had that picture in mind when he was writing that, which is wonderful. But the story of Peter Pan is one where one day children grow up, and
Hmm.
when children grow up, they tend to forget who they really are. And all these stories about their childhood and their dreams and their creativity, they lose that. And what happens is society will mold us to a certain degree with expectations.
Yep.
And we're trying to please. We're social creatures. We're trying to fit in. So what happens after you indulge that long enough? It is possible that you start forgetting who you truly are, and you start taking on this idea of who you are, but deep in your soul, you know that the life you're living is not authentically you.
Hmm.
And I felt that recently. I went to, I was in Washington. I was in Washington, D.C., and I need to, I need to just have a second to look up the name of the movie because I
No,
made
no
it, I
problem.
forget, but it's totally worth it, the story, I promise you. So
Absolutely.
let me
No,
see.
I love your stories. This is awesome.
Um,
It's such a, I think curiosity is one of the most important things
okay,
to hold
I
on
found
to.
it.
Good.
I
Okay.
found it. So the 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 movie is called Look Back, and it's a hand-drawn Japanese movie. And and it's about two girls who love drawing manga in Japan. And through unlikely circumstances, they get to know each other and they pursue their dreams. It's a wonderful, wonderful, um, wonderful, highly recommended. Go and watch it. Um, you may have heard of Tintin from Belgium. Many people don't know all the other comic books that exist. We have a very, very vibrant culture of comic books, and I grew up as a kid. I love drawing. When I watched the movie Look Back, it reminded me of how I was as a kid, just drawing, making up stories, making up characters. And honestly, if you had asked me any question, like even before watching that movie, it would have never even come into my consciousness to describe myself as somebody who's passionate about XYZ. Um, I've lost a piece of my childhood along the way.
Yeah.
And so in this movie, you're watching this, a little piece comes back, a little veil behind the little veil has been lifted, a peek behind the
Nice.
curtain, and you know, I cry.
Hmm.
I cry for lost childhood. I frequently cry for lost childhood. I cry for my innocence I had once. I cry for the curiosity and amazement at the world I once had. Um, and surely, I think the journey people have a lot when they hit retirement is they've forgotten so much who they are because of work and pressures of life that they are on a journey of rediscovery. I would I would say that curiosity is innate. It is who we are as humans.
Hmm.
Every child is born with it, and you can squash it or you can nurture it. But if curiosity is so important to thrive in this new world we're entering, and you in the audience are maybe in your 20s, you're certainly much closer to your childhood than I am at this stage. Um, Cherish it,
Yeah.
reflect on it, meditate it, and do everything in your power to not let the world around you mold you to a point where you do not recognize who you are anymore. Because I will tell you, in every adult I meet, even the most fierce business person, I could bring a little rock tumbler to a meeting. And as a child, they wanted that rock tumbler, but their parents never got it for Christmas. And I will tell you, they're not so fierce and formidable. Behind everyone you meet, there is a child who had dreams and who had an imagination and curiosity and lost something of that along the way. And when we can see people for who they truly are, it is really, I think, like
Powerful.
right before puberty, children and people are their truest self before the world, before they start trying to imitate and impress their peers for social pressure before they deal with all the complexity of hormones. So don't lose it.
Great advice. Great advice and insights. And really, thank you for going deeper on that one because I get those questions about curiosity and I see it escaping people as they mature, and it's something we should really hold on to, like you said. Thinking about first jobs as well, and a lot of our listeners are either thinking about going off to school or maybe entering in the workforce for the first time. I always say we all started somewhere, and sometimes we don't actually even think about the roles we had even as a younger individual because all those skills shape us, transferable skills. You learn something from it. What was your very first job? I know at 13 you were a programming enthusiast, but was there any interesting job that you was your first job that you started off?
I mean, I think every job I've ever had has taught me and shaped me. I remember before my professional career, my dad was a very successful um, creative in the hair industry. He would design hairstyles and magazines would run with it. He would
Really?
give
Wow.
classes, but he also had a hair salon. And my first job was sweeping hair, and then later it was washing hair, and then you know, hairstylists are also like psychologists because they hear everybody's sob story, and you need to learn how to deal with customers and learn how to deal with people, and being the son of the boss of the salon, right? My dad had employees, and I had to have a certain respect towards them, but they also had to remember, right? I was the son of the boss. They couldn't just like yell at me or something. So that I understand there was a certain responsibility towards the employees that I needed to treat them with dignity. And my dad always taught me to, when I entered the salon, he said, "You're the son of the boss. You can't just come with your school backpack, run through the salon, past all the clients, and go upstairs. You need to go and greet every customer. You're the son of the boss." So I would come with my school backpack and I would be like, "Hi, customer. How are you today? How was your day? Are you enjoying yourself?" Next, greeting the employees because I have to honor them. Things like that, it sticks with you.
Yeah.
And whether it was a promotion at events, or whether it was painting at a hotel, or doing dishes at a restaurant, or waiting tables, every summer job I've ever had, um, you know, even to this day, when I see people doing jobs you would think are low tech, right?
Yeah.
I remember what it's like, and I remember to appreciate those people because I know how hard it can be. Um, Sometimes it's easier to learn empathy by experiencing some things. And then professionally, my first job was at a wonderful company um, at the time called Marque. I think today they're called the Fat Lady. They're one of the premier creative agents, marketing agencies in Belgium,
Yeah.
and they would embrace omni-channel marketing in even like 2004, which is now all the rage. And so they would construct these amazing campaigns that span newspapers and radio and television and the internet and mail. And they combine offline and online media in such a wonderful, brilliant way. Very creative company, wonderful group of people. It's certainly where I found I found a real first love and passion with applying my technology to the internet and people, and it's just like this intersection of technology and people
Hmm.
that I find myself at home so much. So I think work-wise, this is the first job where I really felt like I could do this for the rest of my life.
It's amazing. I want to talk to you a little bit about um, something that there's a lot of, well, we're a global economy, right? We're a global world. We're intersecting with so many different people. Like you said this morning, your morning started quite early with people around the world that you were talking to on your teams. A lot of people that are uh, new to a country, come sometimes for school, and ended up staying. And I know sometimes those transitions from country to country and the cultures and all the things that go along with it. Can you share a little bit about your transition from Belgium to the US, and how did this international move, impact your professional growth and maybe even your perspective on the tech industry? How was that, and how did you handle that transition in life?
Yeah. There's this song that goes, "When I'm gone, you're gonna miss me when I'm gone."
Yeah.
There's things that I miss from Belgium now that it's gone. But there's also this idea that you don't really know what you're missing if you always had it.
Yeah.
I think my biggest advantage is as an immigrant is when you come to the Americas, you learn that a lot of things what people locals and natives take for granted is not normal to you.
Mhm.
And when you see it and appreciate it, you tend to have an optimistic view of the country you're moving to, a view of I can do this, a view of opportunities, like, oh my goodness, opportunities everywhere. Whereas if it was always there, you might not see it.
Mhm.
And I think if you don't see it, you might have a more pessimistic view of America and how the country's going and everything. I think immigrants see opportunity because where they came from, they didn't have the same kind of opportunities. And that makes them more optimistic and more bold. I would say that is the greatest advantage that I think I've personally had here. I've met brilliant, very smart people here in this country that, let's be frank, they just don't know how good they have it. And if they really
That's
knew,
true.
they would do much more with their lives because they're much more capable than I am. And yet they don't. They are content with the status quo. And I've met such people in Belgium too.
Mhm.
Um, Life sometimes is so comfortable that there is no stimulus for getting off your couch. And that creates a culture of, hey, let's not change things too much. Um,
Absolutely.
I, I think that is the
And
biggest impact.
and asking you that because I think that's some of the frustrations I hear most from some of the people entering the workforce is, you know, um, the comfortableness with things the way they are, and they're brought into a culture where they thought they were there to maybe add new ideas, perspectives, and change. And sometimes it defaults to transactional change, not transformational change. And what would you say to a young person who's encountering that? Because I've seen a lot of really bright stars tell me about some of their journeys, and that they sometimes hit a wall with, I won't say leadership, I'll say management above, that may
Mm.
not be open to change. And how have you navigated those types of conversations, or any tidbits to give young people who really want to make an impact, are struggling in that space, and maybe how to deal with some of that conflict?
Say, I say, don't accept it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're lucky enough to live in countries with tremendous opportunity, tremendous mobility between companies. If your company truly will not let you rise, then find a company who will appreciate you, because I promise you, they're looking for people who do more than what they're told to do. I mean, I always look for such people. Um, it's one of the most important traits of predicting future successful people. I still remember that my manager told me in 2008, the company I worked for at the time in the United States went out of business. And my manager told me that his boss, the boss of the company, said to him, maybe he made up the story to make me feel better. I don't know whether he actually said that. But my manager said, the boss said, letting go of Alexander is going to be one of my most costly regrets because that kid is going to be a millionaire and he's going to go places. And so I wasn't this experienced or whatnot, but what they recognized already then, and I promise you, good companies will see it in you. They recognized that I had a hunger, a drive, a
Love
passion,
that. Yeah.
and I tell you, good companies will hire you just for that. So if you have a job that does not let you grow or rise, then you are at the wrong place and you should not worry about finding another job because I promise you, such people are precious and are rare. And if you find them, you hold on to them for as long as you can because they are going to reward you so much in your business.
I love that. Thank you so much. To hear that from you is really inspiring, and I hope our audience hears that as well. Like, definitely, I feel like that advice is just priceless. You really need to think about it. One more question. I know I'm so enjoying this conversation. It's just so much great storytelling and insightful thoughts and ideas. Thank you so much for sharing so many of these. I want to talk a little bit about your company. So people are aspiring now to say, well, I see AI, I use ChatGPT, I do different things. Your work focuses on AI, digital marketing. Could you share a little bit about what excites you most about the future of AI and maybe a bit about how you see it might evolving with us?
Yeah,
I know we don't have a crystal ball, but I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts.
I have done a lot of marketing and AI because um, search engines, for examples, are examples of artificial intelligence psychologists where you have to optimize for them, you have to know what they're thinking. And AI is artificial intelligence, so you need to understand how it works in order to be able to communicate with it.
Hmm.
Just like you try to understand your colleagues and have a mind for psychology there, you need that for AI too. I'm working a lot in the fundamentals and the theoretical part of AI, but currently with SmythOS, I'm working on systems on how to make agent building easier for more people. And certainly wonderful and rewarding opportunity. In terms of what I'm most excited about is I firmly believe that AI and AI agents in particular are going to be everywhere and they're going to create a new form of economy. And when faced with a lot of unknown, there's fear. When coronavirus crisis first emerged, there were certain movies on Netflix that were incredibly popular, and they were all dealing with pandemics and things breaking out. People needed a way to cope with it. What it turns out is when you have a fear, your fear almost always gets less. You have less fear the more you learn about the subject and the more you educate yourself and the more you can process it. So with that, I am very deep into processing the AI revolution. I would say this. I think I think for young people, AI and the AI revolution represents a unique opportunity in history when you can be a founding father or a founding mother of the society to come.
Hmm.
Don't look at yourself as like, oh, Benjamin Franklin this or Thomas Jefferson that. No, you are living now in the time when 200 years from now they will think of founding fathers and mothers of the future society because we are reshaping the economy, reshaping society. So this is a chance for young people to imagine what kind of world do we want to leave behind for future generations. This is your chance to take part in the conversation and dream of the future. I don't think there's anything more exciting than that. And I believe if we do it and take it seriously, we can actually make the good version of the future happen. Not just taken for granted the all the doomers stories, because that is the default. If we don't do something, But I
Right.
think there's enough great people and young people with brilliant minds and aspirations and dreams and feel an intense feeling of justice and social responsibility, deeply caring about both the environment and people. I think this represents a unique historical opportunity to define generations to come.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. I just have to tell you, this is one of the most moving, inspiring, and meaningful conversations I've had in a long time. And I'm so glad this started on my morning so I can
Mhm.
take all these thoughts and continue thinking through some of the things you mentioned today and re-listening to this podcast as well. And I know our audience too. There's so much here that you've shared from yourself and from, and I'll say your authentic self, which I can tell is someone that is a special person. And thank you so much
Mhm.
for sharing a little bit more into the insights of yourself, what you're doing in the world, and I really want to, from my heart, thank you for being part of this podcast and
Thank you.
sharing. I really, really appreciate it. And it was great to meet you and have you on here today. So thank you so much, Alexander.
Thank you. Bye.
So, everyone, thank you. If you liked this podcast and heard what you heard today, you can share this with your network on Spotify or wherever you get your podcast. You can also follow Coffee with Convery on Instagram, where you'll see all of our episodes featured. And one last reminder, don't forget, Coffee with Convery is where we show you that success isn't about always climbing the corporate ladder. Sometimes it's about building your own jungle gym. Thank you so much. And until later, have a great day.